There's something about liminal spaces that gets under your skin. You know the feeling, the way a hallway looks at night, or the echo of your own footsteps in a place that should be crowded but isn't. It's that strange in-between world where everything feels just a little bit off, like reality is holding its breath. For me, nothing captures that unease quite like an abandoned mall after dark. The empty storefronts, the flickering lights, the silence that presses in from all sides. It's familiar, but twisted, like a memory you can't quite trust. Tonight I'm going to share stories that will make you think twice before wandering into those forgotten places. Because once you hear what really happens in the shadows of empty malls, you'll never walk through one the same way again. I never thought I'd end up working security at a dead mall. When I started, the place was still alive. Families, teenagers, the smell of cinnamon rolls and popcorn drifting through the air. But over the years, the stores closed one by one, and the laughter faded. Now it's just me, a skeleton crew, and the ghosts of better days echoing through empty corridors. My shift starts at 10 p.m. I clock in, grab my flashlight, and make my rounds. The mall is a different animal at night. The lights flicker overhead, casting long, twitching shadows across the cracked tile. The air is thick with the scent of old grease and stale pretzels, like the food court is still trying to remember what it was. Every sound is amplified. The hum of the vending machines, the distant drip of a leaky pipe, the squeak of my own shoes. I always start in the food court. It's the heart of the place, or at least it used to be. Now, the tables are stacked on top of each other, chairs upside down, and the neon signs above the old burger joint buzz weakly. I walk past the shuttered storefronts, shining my light into the darkness, half expecting to see someone or something staring back. Most nights, it's just me in the silence. But a few weeks ago, things started to change. It was a Thursday, I remember, because I had just finished my second cup of coffee and was feeling the drag of another long, empty night. I was doing my usual sweep when I heard it, a faint, echoing laugh. It sounded like a child, high and quick, bouncing off the tile and vanishing into the shadows. I froze. There shouldn't have been anyone in the mall. I radioed the other guard, but he was on the far side of the building and hadn't heard a thing. I told myself it was nothing, just the building settling, or maybe a memory playing tricks on me. But as I walked past the old pizza place, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. Something darted behind the counter, too quick to see clearly. My heart hammered in my chest. I called out, "Hello, mall security. If anyone's in here, you need to leave." My voice sounded small, swallowed by the emptiness. No answer. I stepped behind the counter, shining my light into every corner, but there was nothing. Just dust, broken tiles, and the lingering smell of tomato sauce. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. Every time I turned a corner, I expected to see someone standing there, just out of reach. The laughter came again, closer this time, echoing through the food court like a taunt. I spun around, my flashlight beam trembling, but the space was empty. That's when I noticed the footprints. Small, greasy prints, like a child, had run barefoot across the floor. They led from the pizza place to the old ice cream stand, then vanished into the darkness. I followed them, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the mall itself was holding its breath. I reached the ice cream stand and stopped. The metal shutter was half open, creaking softly in the draft. I crouched down, shining my light underneath, and saw nothing, just more dust and a few scattered napkins. But as I stood up, I heard a whisper, so close it felt like it was right behind my ear. "Play with me." I spun around, but there was no one there. The laughter erupted again, louder, echoing off the walls until it sounded like a dozen voices all at once. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a chair, and bolted for the security office. I locked the door behind me, heart pounding, and watched the monitors. Every camera showed the same thing: empty halls, empty stores, empty food court. But just as I started to calm down, I saw it. On the screen, in the middle of the food court, stood a small figure. A child, barefoot, staring straight into the camera. I blinked, and she was gone. I never found any evidence. No kids, no break-ins, nothing. But every night since, I hear the laughter. Sometimes, when I'm walking past the food court, I catch a glimpse of tiny footprints in the dust, leading nowhere. I don't know what's haunting that place, but I know one thing for sure: I'm never alone in the mall at night. And if you ever find yourself in an empty food court after dark, listen closely. You might hear the echoes too. There's a special kind of terror in being alone somewhere you shouldn't be, surrounded by echoes and shadows that don't quite belong. But sometimes, what's even more unsettling is realizing you're not alone at all. If you thought the empty food court was unnerving, just wait, because the next story isn't about isolation. It's about what happens when you and your friends aren't the only ones exploring the darkness. I'll never forget the night we broke into the old Crestview Mall. It was me, my best friend Tyler, and his girlfriend Jess. 3 bored college kids looking for a thrill. We'd heard stories about the place, how it was left to rot after the last anchor store closed, how the power still flickered on at night for no reason. It sounded perfect for a little urban exploring, and honestly, we were more excited than scared. We slipped in through a busted service door around midnight, our flashlights cutting through the thick, musty air. The place was a time capsule. Faded sale banners still hung from the ceiling, and the smell of old perfume and plastic lingered in the air. Tyler joked about finding a secret stash of Cinnabon, and Jess kept snapping photos for her Instagram, tagging them #mallrats. We laughed, our voices echoing off the empty walls. The thrill of trespassing making us feel invincible. We wandered past shuttered stores and empty kiosks, daring each other to peek behind counters and into dark storage rooms. The only thing that really creeped me out were the mannequins. They were everywhere, propped up in dusty window displays, some missing arms or heads, all frozen in mid-stride, like they'd been caught trying to escape. Tyler made a show of posing with one, draping his arm around its shoulders and grinning for the camera. Jess rolled her eyes, but I could tell she was a little freaked out too. The deeper we went, the stranger things felt. The air grew colder, and our laughter faded into uneasy silence. Our footsteps sounded too loud, and every so often I'd swear I heard something else moving just out of sight. At one point, Jess stopped dead in her tracks, her flashlight beam trembling. "Did you guys move that mannequin?" she whispered. We turned to look. One of the mannequins, a woman in a faded red dress, was standing in the middle of the hallway, blocking our path. I could have sworn she'd been in the storefront window when we passed a minute ago. Tyler laughed it off, saying we must have just missed her. But I saw the way his hands shook as he adjusted his backpack. We tried to keep the mood light, but the tension was building. Every mannequin seemed to be watching us, their blank faces turned just a little too perfectly in our direction. We started to argue about which way to go, our nerves fraying. That's when we heard it, a soft, scraping sound, like plastic dragging across tile. Jess's flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, I thought I saw the mannequins move. It's not just one, but all of them, shifting closer, their limbs twisted at impossible angles. When the light came back, they were still, but I could feel their presence pressing in on us. We decided to head back, but the mall seemed different, its hallways looping in ways they shouldn't, familiar stores suddenly gone. Tyler swore he saw someone dart past a doorway, but when we chased after, there was nothing but more mannequins, crowding the corridors. Jess started to cry, her voice echoing off the walls, and I felt panic rising in my chest. We tried to stick together, but in the confusion we got separated. I found myself alone, surrounded by mannequins, their glassy eyes reflecting my flashlight. I could hear Tyler and Jess calling my name, but their voices sounded warped, distant, like they were coming from underwater. The scraping grew louder, closer, until I could barely breathe. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything went silent. I stumbled into the main atrium, heart pounding, and found Tyler and Jess huddled together, pale and shaking. We didn't say a word as we ran for the exit. The mannequins' faces burned into our memories. We never talked about what happened that night, not really. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I see those mannequins, waiting, watching, ready to move the moment I look away. And I know we left something behind in that mall, something that's still there waiting for the next group of thrill seekers to wander in after midnight. It's strange how quickly a night of laughter and adventure can twist into something you'll never forget for all the wrong reasons. For that group of friends, the mall's emptiness became a nightmare they couldn't escape. But sometimes, the most disturbing stories don't start with a choice at all. The next account comes from someone who never meant to enter a liminal space. And what happened to them is truly unforgettable. I never believed in the stories about the mall. I'd heard the rumors, of course, every longtime employee had. Whispers about strange noises, cold spots, and doors that led nowhere. But I always chalked it up to bored night staff and overactive imaginations. I was practical, grounded. I just wanted to finish my shift, collect my paycheck, and get home. That's why what happened to me still doesn't make sense, no matter how many times I replay it in my head. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the hours crawl by and the silence feels heavy. I was working late, helping the maintenance crew clear out some old storage rooms on the lower level. Most of the lights were off, and the only sound was the distant hum of the air conditioning. I was pushing a cart of broken mannequins, leftovers from a store that had closed years ago, when I noticed a door I'd never seen before. It was wedged between two service corridors, half hidden behind a stack of empty boxes. The paint was peeling, and there was no sign or label, just a tarnished brass handle. I should have ignored it, but something about the door drew me in. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was just the monotony of the night getting to me. Either way, I set the cart aside and pulled the door open. The hallway beyond was narrow and dimly lit, the walls painted a sickly yellow that seemed to pulse in the flickering light. I stepped inside expecting to find a broom closet or maybe a forgotten storage room. Instead, the corridor stretched on and on, far longer than should have been possible. My footsteps echoed strangely, as if the space was swallowing the sound. I glanced back, but the door had swung shut behind me. I tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My heart started to race, but I told myself it was just a maintenance passage, probably leading to another part of the mall. I walked forward, the air growing colder with every step. The lights overhead buzzed and flickered, casting warped shadows that seemed to move on their own. I walked, the corridor began to change. The floor tiles shifted from white to a dull, mottled gray. The walls narrowed, then widened, then narrowed again, as if the building itself was breathing. I passed doors that led to nowhere. Some opened onto blank walls, others onto empty, windowless rooms filled with broken furniture and piles of old flyers. I tried to retrace my steps, but every turn led me deeper, the layout looping back on itself in impossible ways. I started to panic. My phone had no signal, and the battery was draining faster than it should have. I called out, hoping someone from the maintenance crew would hear me. But my voice sounded muffled, like I was shouting underwater. The only answer was the distant, rhythmic thump of something heavy moving in the darkness. I picked up my pace, desperate to find an exit. The corridor twisted and turned, the lights growing dimmer until I was stumbling through near darkness. I passed a cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, and for a split second, I saw movement behind me, a shadow that didn't belong to me, gliding silently just out of reach. I broke into a run, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The air felt thick, almost oily, and the walls seemed to close in around me. I turned a corner and found myself in a vast, empty atrium I'd never seen before. The ceiling soared overhead, lost in shadow, and the floor was covered in a thin layer of dust that muffled my footsteps. In the center of the room stood a single, child-sized mannequin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, arms outstretched as if to welcome me. I backed away, but every exit led to another corridor, each one more twisted and surreal than the last. The sense of being watched grew stronger, prickling at the back of my neck. I could hear whispers now, soft and urgent, coming from the walls themselves. They spoke in a language I didn't understand, but the fear in their voices was unmistakable. I don't know how long I wandered, minutes, hours, maybe longer. Time didn't seem to work right in that place. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in darkness so complete it felt like drowning. I pressed my hands against the walls, searching for a seam, a crack, anything that would lead me out. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, until they were all I could hear. Then, just as suddenly as it began, I stumbled through a door and found myself back in the main mall corridor. The lights were on, the air was warm, and the distant sound of a cleaning crew's radio drifted through the air. I looked back, but the door I'd come through was gone, just a blank stretch of wall where it should have been. No one believed me when I told them what happened. They said I must have gotten turned around, maybe fallen asleep in one of the storage rooms. But I know what I saw, what I felt. Sometimes late at night, I catch glimpses of that sickly yellow light flickering at the edge of my vision, or hear those whispers echoing in the empty halls. I avoid the lower level now, but I can't shake the feeling that the lost corridor is still there, waiting for someone else to find it. And if you ever see a door that shouldn't be there, in a place you thought you knew, don't open it. Some liminal spaces are better left unexplored. There's a reason liminal spaces haunt our dreams and memories. They're the places that exist on the edge of what's familiar. Empty malls, silent corridors, forgotten corners where the world feels thin, and anything might be waiting just out of sight. Maybe it's the echoes of the past, or maybe it's something stranger, something that feeds on the silence and the shadows. Whatever it is, these stories remind us that even the most ordinary places can become terrifying when the lights go out and the crowds disappear. Have you ever found yourself somewhere that felt wrong, like you'd stepped into a place between worlds? Maybe you've wandered through an empty mall at night, or caught a glimpse of movement in a deserted hallway. If you have your own story, I want to hear it. Share it in the comments below, and let's see just how many of us have brushed up against the unknown. And remember, next time you pass an empty corridor or a door you've even never noticed before, will you dare to look inside? Or will you keep walking, hoping that whatever's waiting in the liminal spaces never notices you at all? Sleep well if you can.